The ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict has not only left deep scars on the geopolitical landscape, but also brought to light serious human rights violations. Among the most concerning revelations is the recent report by the United Nations documenting the abuse of prisoners of war, POWs, by both sides. This report underscores systemic abuses perpetrated primarily by Russian forces, while also shedding light on certain instances of Ukrainian mistreatment of Russian POWs. The findings have sparked international outrage and could have significant implications for future peace negotiations and global accountability efforts. The Russia-Ukraine war began in February 2022, following years of escalating tensions between the two nations. Russia's invasion marked a significant intensification of a conflict that had already caused deep divisions since 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea and backed separatist forces in eastern Ukraine. These events have been a flashpoint in the broader struggle over Ukraine's sovereignty, as well as a reflection of Russia's desire to assert its influence over its neighbor. As the war unfolded, millions of people were displaced, infrastructure was destroyed, and countless lives were lost. The chaos of war also created an environment where violations of international norms, including the treatment of POWs, became alarmingly prevalent. Against this backdrop, the UN's report highlights the importance of addressing these issues as part of a broader effort to bring accountability to the conflict. The UN report offers a grim picture of the experiences endured by POWs. Accounts from survivors, legal investigations, and corroborative evidence detail instances of torture, psychological abuse, and inhumane detention conditions. While the majority of these abuses were attributed to Russian forces, the report also points to certain violations committed by Ukrainian forces. The testimonies from former POWs provide a harrowing insight into the suffering that has taken place behind closed doors. Ukrainian POWs described being subjected to intense physical abuse, including beatings, electric shocks, and mock executions. One survivor recounted being held in a cell for weeks without adequate ventilation or light, suffering repeated beatings and denied basic necessities like food and medical care. Psychological torment was another common feature, with prisoners facing constant threats of execution and being forced to confess to fabricated crimes. Conditions within detention facilities were dire. Overcrowding, unsanitary environments, and insufficient access to food and water compounded the physical abuse. These conditions appeared to be part of a systemic approach to degrade and dehumanize prisoners, breaking their will to resist. While less frequent, the report also noted allegations of mistreatment by Ukrainian forces. Russian POWs described instances of physical violence upon capture and during initial interrogations. Some were denied food or medical care in the immediate aftermath of their detention. Though these incidents lacked the systemic nature observed in Russian-controlled facilities, they nonetheless highlight the need for vigilance and accountability on all sides. The Geneva Conventions are clear in their mandate. All POWs must be treated humanely, with protection from violence, intimidation, and degrading treatment. The violations outlined in the UN report represent a stark breach of these international norms and raise profound legal and ethical concerns. Acts such as torture, inhumane treatment, and unlawful confinement qualify as war crimes under international law. The findings of the UN report provide a foundation for pursuing justice through mechanisms like the International Criminal Court, ICC. However, securing accountability is fraught with challenges, not least because both Russia and Ukraine have accused each other of war crimes, complicating the pursuit of impartial investigations. The abuse of POWs undermines trust between the warring parties, further complicating efforts to negotiate peace. A resolution to the conflict will require not only a cessation of hostilities, but also a commitment to address these violations. Failing to do so risks perpetuating cycles of violence and eroding the principles of international law. The international community has reacted strongly to the UN's findings, with governments, human rights organizations, and advocacy groups calling for immediate action. Many have emphasized the need for independent investigations and stronger monitoring mechanisms to ensure compliance with humanitarian laws. Western nations, including the United States and members of the European Union, have condemned the abuses in the strongest terms. Diplomatic efforts have focused on pressuring both Russia and Ukraine to adhere to international norms. Some governments have also offered technical and legal support to facilitate investigations into these violations. Organisations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have played a crucial role in amplifying the voices of survivors and advocating for transparency. Their calls for unrestricted access to detention facilities and accountability for perpetrators have added weight to the UN's findings. These groups have also stressed the importance of providing psychological and medical support to former POWs as part of a broader effort to address the long-term impacts of abuse. Efforts to address the mistreatment of POWs face significant obstacles. The ongoing nature of the conflict makes it difficult to ensure compliance with international norms, while the politicization of allegations complicates efforts to establish the truth. One major challenge is verifying the testimonies of former POWs. Both sides have accused each other of fabricating evidence or exaggerating claims, and impartial investigations are often hindered by logistical and political constraints. Advances in technology, such as satellite imagery and forensic analysis, offer potential tools for verifying these accounts, but they require significant resources and cooperation from all parties. Historically, many violations in armed conflicts have gone unpunished due to insufficient evidence, political constraints, or a lack of will. The international community must find ways to ensure accountability, whether through strengthening existing mechanisms like the ICC or creating new avenues for justice. Encouraging whistleblowers to come forward with evidence and providing them with protections could also play a critical role in breaking the cycle of impunity. The UN report provides a roadmap for addressing the issue of POW abuse. Central to this effort is the need for independent investigations that can establish the facts and ensure accountability. International monitors should be deployed to oversee detention conditions and ensure that both sides comply with the Geneva Conventions. Humanitarian organisations, such as the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, must also be given greater access to detention facilities to monitor conditions and provide assistance. Strengthening adherence to international norms will require sustained pressure from the global community. Diplomatic measures, sanctions, and public condemnation can all serve to incentivize compliance. At the same time, providing support for survivors, whether through medical care, psychological counselling, or legal aid, is essential to addressing the long-term impacts of abuse. The UN report on POW abuse in the Russia-Ukraine conflict is a sobering reminder of the human cost of war. Its findings underscore the urgent need for accountability and the importance of upholding humanitarian principles. By addressing these violations, the international community can take a crucial step toward restoring faith in the rule of law and laying the groundwork for lasting peace. The path forward will be challenging, but it is one that must be pursued with determination and resolve. The stakes, for the individuals affected, for the principles of justice, and for the prospects of peace, could not be higher.